Hello, welcome once again to Pale Blooms and Beyond. Thank you for joining me today. Guitarist, singer, songwriter Keene Hedge Capers, aka Hedges Capers, is probably best known as being one half of the soft folk and folk rock duo Hedge and Donna, Donna Carson being the other half. The couple harmonized well together, complemented by Hedges' delicate guitar playing. The duo recorded 6 albums between 1968 and 1973 and were married until 1976. Sadly, Donna passed away in 2019 at the age of 73. Hedges did continue writing songs, performing, and even tried his hand at acting, which we'll find out about a little later. But speaking of acting, Mr. Capers did marry actress Nancy Locke, and they both received degrees in psychotherapy. The couple co-wrote a musical together. And most recently, there's a TV comedy series that Hedges wrote music for, as well as a part in I Love Lucifer. So we'll find out about that as well. Well, welcome, Hedges.
Thank you. Okay, great to be here.
Okay. Thank you for joining me. So let's go back a few years. So you were born in Princeton, New Jersey, is that correct?
Yes, 1945. My dad was going to seminary there. He was on sabbatical leave from the Navy. He had joined the Navy as a judo instructor. And then my grandfather was a Presbyterian minister as well. So he had sort of that as his upbringing.
Okay. Well, how was your childhood?
I say it continues. 78 years later, it's still good. Princeton. My dad was Navy and his Navy chaplain, and so my childhood was spent. I think I added up something like 23 different schools before I graduated from college, and we didn't spend more than a year and a half or 2 years in any one place until I graduated from college. And so it was all over the country, and in Guam, Japan, Pennsylvania, Topeka, strange place for a Navy guy, but Dad was at the Menninger Foundation there, and so we traveled traveled a lot. I think for myself, it was a pretty extraordinary education in adaptability.
Right.
Learn to make friends very, very quickly and know that you're going to say goodbye and never see them again, which is an unusual sort of thing.
Right.
Well, that's a legacy later in terms of relationships only lasting a year and a half or 2 years. That was an interesting thing in hindsight to see that for also with moving from houses, even when I was renting, it's like a year and a half, 2 years max. Yeah.
That sounds a lot like my wife before we were married. She was used to moving quite a bit, and I always the opposite, stay in one place for a long periods of time. So she had that itch to move not long after we were married, and
I think for my sister, I don't know how it was for your wife. For my sister, some of the moves happened at really critical developmental stages for her. And I think that's kind of hard, more difficult, I think, for a female than might be for a young boy.
Yeah.
But so I had a good friend in high school. He said, "God, what's it like? You don't have any roots. What's it like to, live to?" I said, "I don't know. What's it like to live in one place all your life?"
Right.
You have nothing to compare it to. So for me, I thought it was really kind of a wonderful childhood.
Right. Can you remember some of the earliest memories of music that you may have heard playing in the household?
My mother had a reel-to-reel tape recorder. And she had, that's my first, but we didn't have a record player until after I had my first album. But the recorder she had with us all the time. So, and it played Bach, Beethoven, Rimsky-Korsakov, Tchaikovsky, wonderful classical music stuff, which I loved dearly. And until at the swimming pool one day from a radio off in the distance, I heard 1, 2, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 5, 6, 7 o'clock, and I was gone. That and Huey Piano Smith singing "You Give Me High Blood Pressure." So so early on, it was just all classical influence, and then top 40 rock.
Yeah.
That was-
Were either one of your parents musically inclined?
my mom was my dad could not carry a tune with a if he had a dump truck, he couldn't carry it. And yet, as a minister, he's standing in front of the congregation singing boldly. He used to walk around the house to singing to my mother, says, you know, I don't know if we're in a garden or on a crowded avenue. Yeah. But it just could never carry the tune with it. But my mom was a wonderful, sang in the choir a lot and loved it. And although he couldn't carry the tune, he was incredibly supportive of my love and my entrance to music.
Well, that's great. That's great.
I thought remarkable because I wasn't sure he really heard what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
You know, if you can't carry a tune, there's something about your ability to hear the tones. So I just thought I didn't know whether or not he really heard us, but he was incredibly supportive.
Well, that's always good to hear. You know, because you hear about so many parents that, especially back then, that were, you know, discouraging. And
I was really fortunate in when I was in high school, the kids that were running away from home rather, they would run to my mother.
Oh, okay. So there was a little haven there.
There's an island of order that, you know, I mean, she would collect money to, you know, help somebody have enough money to hitchhike across the country to go visit his actual mother. You know.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice parents then, for sure.
They were extraordinary.
Go ahead. What can you remember? One of your first 45s or albums that you got?
I did not. As I said, I didn't have a record player until after Donna and I recorded our first album, and I'd already had 2 recording contracts, but didn't have a record player. Never had a record. You know, the radio was the only place that we got music, that I got music. And when I was in in Japan, when I was 14 to 16, 14, 15, 15 and a half. And we only got 30 minutes of music a week with Armed Forces Radio on Sunday, the top 40 stuff. And so I knew pretty much every top 40 song from 1951 to 1958. I could hear it. The first time I heard it, I had all the lyrics. My brain was weird that way. And 58, 59, there's this dearth. I only had 30 minutes a week. Yeah. And all the kids who were, you know, on the base with us there, we would all gather on Sunday evenings to listen to those 30 minutes because it was it. Except for one time we had a guy named Butch McWilliams who was the new kid to the thing, and he came with a load of records, and I think there's a Eagles song about New Kid on the Block, you know, new kid who's everyone loves him. Well, Butch loved him because he brought the music with him.
Wow, okay. So you could just tap into that.
Yeah.
Well, what were some as a teen, what were some of the artists or bands that you were really into?
Well, you know, I mean, Buddy Holly was, you know, I was a huge Buddy Holly fan, and Elvis, of course, because that was, you know, of 1957, 56, 57. But also Brooke Benton, and let's see, who else? Huey Piano Smith. I was a big fan of Huey Piano Smith. Let's see, who else? Jackie Wilson. I mean, extraordinary. Little Richard. Just loved that. Loved his whole world. Not a Pat Boone fan. let's see who else. Of the Supremes later on, of course. After I started writing music, I stopped really listening to other people.
Okay.
I had a concern. I didn't want to write something someday and wake up and say, "Oh, that was that."
Right.
You didn't
Right.
write it, that was somebody else's stuff. So I think it's a dilemma for some writers of like, how do you avoid, how do you access the music in you?
Hmm. Very
And
good.
it's tough because when Don and I were together, there was, I was a huge fan of Mad Men Across the Water.
Hmm.
John Simon. And Bernie Taupin, I thought, was extraordinary lyricist and much better than what I think came later. But Mad Dogs and Englishmen. I mean, how do you not, Leon Russell? How do you not? So it was dilemma with wanting to hear, wanting to listen, and not wanting to have it influence in a way that had me plagiarizing something.
Right. Sounding too much like them. Yeah, I can see that dilemma. I can definitely.
Yeah,
Get that.
I'm sure that different writers have different, senses about it. It's hard. 1950s music is all C, A minor, F, G7, so there's not a whole lot of different ways to write that chord progression. And yet it served a generation pretty well. And then Dylan left out the A minor,
Yeah. Right. Well, did you pick up playing guitar or bass first?
I never learned to play bass, just guitar.
Okay.
I play bass on my keyboard with that stuff. But I just wanted to sing.
Okay.
And if you need to sing, you got to have some way to play it. And pianos were too big for our family to move every 12 months or so. And some in Japan, some fans of my singing who happen to be young sailors traded a motorbike for a guitar and gave it to me to be able to start playing guitar. So at 15 is when I started playing guitar.
Is that right? Okay. Very interesting. Well, when did you start getting into folk music?
So I had in high school, I was in a rock and roll band. I was the lead singer in a rock and roll band playing electric guitar on Friday and Saturday nights at the Teen Club in Monterey. And then after hours, I would then, because the Teen Club finished at 10 o'clock, and then I'd go to a little coffee shop called Sancho Panza's with my acoustic guitar. And it was a circle of folk singing singers. So I started just before, I think Highway 61 Revisited, or about that. And I think was that his first album? Is before I heard about Dylan. So just before that. Donna had been, Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, Diana Washington sort of fan and worked in that genre. But when she got to Whittier, we were both in college, that's when she sort of got enamored with the folk style of music as well.
Did she like Odetta?
Odetta loved us.
Okay.
Odetta almost not killed. Odetta tore Fred Weintraub another place for a lot of things to happen, because we were staying with her in New York and we were playing. I'm going off into the future. I could come back to that. You tell me what
That's right. That's right. That's all right.
So we were playing at the bitter end, and they had a piano on stage but it had been somehow placed on stage without really fully attaching the rear legs to it. And I started to try to move it. Odetta was with us at the time. We were staying at her place in New York. And I tried to move the piano, and the legs collapsed, and it came down and hit me just above the knees as I was backing away. But I was bent forward, fortunately, so I took the brunt of the keyboard on my thigh, not on the knee. It could have taken my kneecaps off. But Odetta was just furious with Fred Weintraub for having a piano on stage that somebody could injure themselves like that with it. We were introduced to her by, well, I tell you, do you want me to go there or not right now? Because I'll tell the story.
Okay.
Don and I were we'd signed with Capitol. I don't know whether we'd finished the recording or not, but we were playing at the Troubadour. Doug Weston was our manager at the time. And that's an interesting story. I'll come back to that one. But Doug said, you have an invitation for dinner, to come to a person's house. And it was Gilbert Roland is his name, the actor, Gilbert Roland.
Okay.
And so it's Gilbert and Gia Roland, his wife, who is a Yaqui Indian. She taught me how to make guacamole that night, Yaqui Indian style. But at the time, Don and I we were both, I mean, it was like early on, we were totally penniless, broken, rent is due. And it's like, we're wondering how we're going to do that, how we're going to pay that. And so we have a wonderful dinner and find out that Odetta, they're a big fan of Odetta as well. And they have this, Gia made this wonderful piece of art that shows two profiles of Odetta facing one another, and the shape in between is quite remarkable. It's almost a candelabra, beautiful shape together. But so we have a wonderful dinner, and we get back to the house afterwards, and I'm getting undressed and I take off my jacket. I'm emptying my pockets, and inside the pocket are two $100 bills.
Oh man. Oh, okay. Wow.
And the rent was $200.
Right.
I don't know how in the world they found out, or they knew, or whatever. And over the course of the next 8 months, we had 3 more invites for dinner. Mm-hmm. At which time we were broke. And I said, Gilbert, you can't do this. Gilbert, I tell you, I'm the heavy. We went with him into Tijuana once, where he walked the streets with silver dollars in his pocket, just reaching in and just dropping a couple, and the kids just swarmed him. So they introduced us to Odetta, and it was remarkable to find out how I have still to this day no idea of how they knew we were in that level of need, and how each time they were right there. And at the last time, Gilbert said, you won't need this, because something had happened and we were making some money from something. And he said, you won't need this again, but do it for someone else.
Right. Pass it on. That's a wonderful story. That's what I like about doing these interviews, to hear stories like that. That's what makes these special right there. Thank you for sharing that. So,
well, I thank Gilbert.
Right.
Gilbert, I know you're up there somewhere. I'm sorry that it's just the brain, it happens.
Very generous person. Yes.
Oh, he was amazing. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about how you and Donna first met at Whittier, the circumstances.
Yep. The first time we were actually met, standing side by side, there's a first freshman week at Whittier is an orientation week. Or the upperclassmen come before they want to, the thing called button you with, you got to put your hands on your cap and stuff like this bullshit. But so the first week there was this orientation. There's a lot of things, and at the end of the week there's a party and a talent show type thing. And I'll give you one thing before Donna and I, but so I'm down auditioning for the talent show, got my guitar and I'm sitting there, and another guy over here with the guitar is playing, and he comes over while I'm playing and start playing with me, and another guy walks over and we started singing together just because we were there waiting to get called for our turn to go audition. And when that happened, this woman who's running the show opens the door, says, "You guys are next, come on." So we'd never sung together except for that, just kind of get, well, okay, why not? We'll do it. Arnie Moore, the guy with the other guitar, became our bass player and played later for Hoyt Axton and for John Stewart and Richie Havens. And then he was a bass player for a country bar in LA that's probably the best country music, he was the house bar bass player. So now so I had a trio, and about 2 days later, I'm walking the streets of Whittier and I see at the Oak Room, which is downtown Whittier, trio wanted. And I said, we have a trio. So I went down and auditioned, and for 4 years we played at the Wandering Minstrels of that. And every show, every kind of college event stuff where there was music required, we played as a trio, and Donna sang as a soloist. Now, so back now to the auditions before that. After the talent show thing, there was a big party, and they had a band playing for the party. And somehow, at one point along the line, the band is playing. I got pushed up on stage, and Donna got pushed up on stage while they're playing, "You know the best things in life are free." So we sang Money together the first week of Whittier. And then we were together, playing, she as a soloist, me as with the trio, and sometimes I would play guitar for her in the soloist things that she was doing at different college events. And so we became good friends. And when about Easter time of our senior year, graduation is upcoming or looming or upcoming, I'm not sure which. I went to Donna and I said, I'd like to take a ride downtown LA and talk. And so we took the bus downtown to LA, and we're walking around the park down there in Washington Park. And I said, "So what are you going to do graduation time?" She said, "Well, I'm going to go to San Francisco State. I'm going to study psychology, and that's sort of it." And I said, "Well, what have you really always wanted to do?" And she said, "Sing, of course." I said, "I think we should give it a try." And she said, "That sounds wonderful." So I went back and we rehearsed, 6-7 hours a day for the next, couple of weeks, and working together to learn each other's voice, learn each other's breathing patterns. And we were working on 3 different songs. There's I think it was Easter vacation, I guess. Her folks lived in San Diego, my folks lived in San Diego. And so we came down on the bus, and I knew of a club in La Mesa called the Bifrost Bridge that I'd sung at as a soloist years in the summers and stuff. And I said, "There's a club there, we can go play there." It was the first time we'd performed in front of people outside of the Money song. And so we went and sang at the Bifrost Bridge, and the folks loved it, and we got a lot of reinforcement. Yeah, this people enjoyed this. This is good. This is working. And we missed the bus going back to LA, to Whittier. and my folks loaned me a car. And so it's Sunday afternoon, we're driving back, we have a car. We don't have to go back right away because we got a car, we can go where we want to go. And there's a club on Fairfax that I knew about that had a hoot night on Sunday nights. And I said, let's go there. So we went, we signed up for the hoot and did our 3 songs. And as we're coming off stage, the owner of the club, the woman, pulled us over to the side and was saying, I need to sign you to a management contract. Do you have a manager? I'm going to sign you for a management contract. And as I'm listening to her talk, somebody walked past us, behind us, and literally whispered in my ear, go to the Troubadour tomorrow night.
Okay.
And so it's okay, we have the car, we can do that. And so it's Monday afternoon, 2 o'clock, we show up in front of the Troubadour, and there's 2 guys in line. One guy's a short redheaded kid. Later, he was in Dr. Hook and the Medicine Band. And another guy, I don't really remember him, but so we get in line and they say, oh, you came at a good time. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And the hoot starts at 8, something like that, right? But because we're there at that time, you get like 10 o'clock spot, unless they've given it already to someplace else, somebody else. And then they told us the routine: you sing your 3 songs, and then you run off the stage and touch the back wall. And if they're still applauding, you come back up and you do an encore. And so time came. I think we met Jackson Browne in line that night, I think. And later, I think we were the first people to record his music. But he was, I mean, at that time, wonderful, wonderful writer, could not get a record deal. People didn't think he could sing. He became a good singer, I think, but in those days he was not so good.
Right.
So we go up on stage, we do our 3 songs, and there were standing ovations to each of them. And we're trying to, kind of wander back off, and the crowd just kept applauding, and they said, go back up there. And we said, well, we only know 3 songs right now. I said, and so we went back up stage and said, I'm sorry, but we only know 3 songs. And the crowd was, do it again, do it again, do it again. So we did those 3 songs again. And the guy who was the hoot master was a guy named Larry Murray.
Okay.
And Larry was in a group at the time called Hearts and Flowers with Bernie Ledden, who became Eagles. And Bernie was Nick Vinay was producing Hearts and Flowers, the Stone Ponies with Linda at the time, Linda Ronstadt and the Stone Ponies, Freddie Neal. He's an amazing singer, songwriter. But so after our 3 songs repeat, Larry pulled, he came to get us at the stage. He said, come with me. And he took us upstairs into the dressing room and said, stay here. And he went and got Nick Vinay, who was his producer, who had been in the alley hitting on some chick. But he came in to see the standing ovation and went to find Larry to say, who are these people? And Larry was out looking for him. So they finally connected, and he brought Nick upstairs, and Nick said, I want to sign you to Capitol Records. He had Curtis. And so we're thinking, well, okay, that's great. I mean, it's not what we wanted, our plan had been to somehow get a couple of jobs, work for the summer, make enough money to buy a Volkswagen microbus and go someplace and play wherever anyone would listen to us. And it turns out, I mean, what he really was saying, come to Capitol and audition. We didn't know that, but that's what it was. And we did that the next day and signed that day. But there had been offers from Columbia, RCA, and Mercury, A&R guys in the audience at that time, who had sent the messages to Larry. But we never got those. And so we so now we had these 3 songs, and we had to come up with 7 or 8 more for the first album, and we were sort of stunned with, well, this is awfully fast to have this happen. And we were, again, we were broke. So Nick got us a deal that paid us $500 for the 2 of us, to give up our publishing for life to the Cohen brothers, Mutt and Herb Cohen, which later got reversed, of course. But it was interesting because the time frame for that, many of the record companies at that time were paying really, really big signing bonuses for acts. Too many of whom they rented houses and put them up, and the whole deal. And in $67, really quite substantial, money signings.
Yeah.
And most of that, with many of the groups, that went right up their nose, and no music got produced. And so we were just after that time when record companies said, this is waste of time for us to do this. And so they weren't offering those kinds of bonuses or anything like that. But so that was, so I guess we signed, it must have been in April or May, signed with Capitol. And then at the end of the summer, by the end of the summer, we'd recorded the first album, and it was released, I think, in October.
Let me ask you how it was working with Nick. Because he was the producer for your first 4 albums, is that right?
It's interesting. He was a producer for our first 4 albums, but I had 2 record contracts before that.
Mm-hmm.
And the first one was with Rendezvous Records. I signed a contract with Rendezvous Records when I was 16. And I don't know whether you're interested in one of that story or not, but
yeah,
okay,
please.
So I'm in the rock and roll band up in Monterey, and
Mm-hmm.
Kim Fowley, I don't know whether you know that name or not. Kim Fowley.
Yes.
Okay, so Kim, he produced Alley Oop, and the Hollywood Argyles, and he produced a whole bunch of different stuff. And he also worked with Nick Vinay, which is an interesting connection. So Kim Fowley came to Monterey for a blind date with a woman who stood him up in Monterey, and he was up there. So he went to the record station and said, "You got any talent in this town?" And they gave him my name and number. And so he came to our house, and Nick, he was an unusual looking guy, because he was about 6'7", just very, very tall, very gaunt, very outgoing personality. But I kind of liken him to Ichabod Crane in my mind.
Okay.
But so he came and he said, "So I hear you can sing, and play me something." So I played him some things, and he said, "Okay, do you write?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "So tell me what you've written. Play me what you've written." And I played some things, and he said, "Okay, we're going to write a song. We're going to write some songs." And we wrote 2 songs that afternoon. And he said, "Okay, I'll be in touch." And he left, and about a week and a half later, I got a call to say, "I've set up a recording session at Rendezvous Records for you." And they sent the contract up to us. And then my dad drove me down from Monterey to Selma and Vine for Rendezvous Records to do the recording. The recording contract, by the way, it's interesting wording for a recording contract. It had a clause in it that sort of listed out the number of songs that are written each year, and the number of those songs that actually get published, and the number of those songs that get recorded, and the number of those songs that actually get released, and the number of the songs that get released that actually get played on the radio, and the number of songs that get played on the radio to the number of songs that are a hit. And it lists all these fantastic numbers, the outcome of which is the likelihood of having a hit record is you're more likely to be struck by lightning 3 times in the same day than you are to have a hit.
Oh, man.
So if you hear someone in the studio say it's a hit, don't go out and put a down payment on a new Cadillac. That was actually
I wanted to show this when you mentioned there.
oh yeah, oh right.
Okay, when you mentioned Kim Fowley,
Oh yeah.
I picked up recently, and there are, I don't know, there's the Renegades, the Gamblers, the Caros.
He wrote a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, these are all obscure, but that's the kind of stuff I like to
And
find.
he wrote with a lot of people.
Right. Yes, he did.
And as I mean, he came to my house and we wrote Broken Home, Broken Heart in 2 hours, it even had a talking part. I mean, it was really bad. But so I go down to Hollywood and record, and it's the first time I'd ever been in the studio and probably pretty scared. Jerry Riapelli was the engineer. That's another name you might recognize.
Okay. Yeah.
And he was also evidently a part of Rendezvous Records. The studio was Rendezvous Records recording studio. So we go back to Monterey, and I don't hear anything for a couple of weeks. And then I don't remember whether it was a call or a letter that said, we're sorry, we're not going to be releasing Broken Home, Broken Heart. And you probably won't ever be able to do any recording. Your sibilants are too bad. You pop on your P's, you hiss on your S's, and yada, yada, yada. So, which was sort of at 16 devastating. And I thought, it's really kind of down for about a couple of weeks. And then I realized, well, it's the first time I've ever been in the studio. I know how to work a mic on stage, but I didn't know how to work one in the studio. And I think I can probably learn. So I'm not sure they were right that says I'll never be able to do that.
Right.
And then moving forward in time with the trio, we had to work the room without mics. So I had a very small voice before that group and had to learn, because I was singing lead with them most of the time. So I had to learn to be able to start projecting, which really helped sibilants, I think, when the time came around. There are other dilemmas with recording at that time, because when Donna and I go into the studio to record the very first, when it was just the two of us doing auditionings, it was a piece of cake. I got to maintain all the rhythm structure and with the guitar, and we knew how to sing together, and so that was good. We walked into the first session that we had, and we walked in the studio, this Capitol Studio B, which is their big studio, and there's a 67-piece orchestra there, and I'm thinking, well, how do you? I've never. And Jimmy Bond had done the arrangements for the first album, and he was the conductor at that time. And I'm just overwhelmed by all these instruments in there, and I can't remember my parts. I'm just listening, and all I hear is the French horn section, and my melody suddenly becomes the French horn parts, and that's okay. So let's get with the horn section. You all are free for you're released right now. And by the time we got down to it, it was just the string section left. and he said, just count off a couple of measures, and then we'll kick this off. And I had all of my life purposefully and very intently refused to learn to read music.
Okay.
Because I had, about 10 years old, I watched a guy playing piano, what I thought was brilliantly playing piano, with, he had sheet music in front of him, played just all kinds of different styles of stuff. And I asked him to play a particular song, and he said, "Do you have the sheet music?" And I said, "No." he said, well, I can't play it without the sheet music. And it stuck in my head in a weird sort of, just a strange connection I made inside that said, if I learn the structure,
Mhm.
I will not have access to the music that's in me.
Right.
It's our sort of connection, but he could play anything that was written, but he couldn't play anything without that.
Right.
And the meaning that I made of it is that I know I have music in me.
Uh-huh.
That's the music I want. I don't want that music. I love that music, but I want the music that's in me.
And that brings up kind of a point. I don't know if this is related at all, but I think I like the music that's the most organic, like you said, that comes from within. And I think a lot of throughout history, there's been these, well, especially during this time period, the click tracks,
Yeah.
and I've talked to several different musicians about that. And I think the songs that come out the best in the end are the ones without the click tracks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's too structured, I think, a little bit too structured.
Yeah, the only benefit I think for the click track is that as a writer, if you're having other people play with it,
Right.
On live sessions, people can follow, if they know how to play, they can follow one another.
Right.
But in a pre-recorded session, I'll be able to see the player.
Uh-huh. Right.
If the time is sliding or moving or sliding like that, it's more problematic.
Yeah.
For me, it really was, there's rules about music in the structured form. There's rules with it. And I was terrified that the rules would limit my access to what I knew I had in me.
Right.
So, even in, music in class, we had a music class that I had to take for a requirement, it's like you have to take an either music or art or or architecture. So, there's these classes you had to take pick one. And so I would fail music whenever possible or get kicked out. I remember I had a music teacher, Mr. White, who I didn't think he loved music. And so he's out of the room at the time that King Creole came out. And so I'm singing is the song Crawfish, Crawfish, Crawfish. But I'm singing White, Mr. White, take Mr. White in your hand. It's gonna look good in your frying pan. If you're frying good, you spoil him right, it'll be sweet and yet. So I'm singing that song. The class is having a good time laughing at that. He comes in the door to hear it. And that was it. I was out of music. Yeah, so I get to to an orchestra of 67 pieces, and I wasn't used to any of that structure.
Yeah.
And then there's the nervousness. I listened to that first album, and I'm playing finger picking some songs in there faster than can be finger picked with adrenaline, and I had to learn how to play some of them again to keep up with how fast I played them there. So
we'll talk about the songwriting process typically with you and Donna. How did that go?
Well, anytime I've had a partner of any kind, I've given them credit with the songs that I've written. Yeah. So Donna did some of the writing, and hers would be lyric, almost exclusively lyric stuff. So, and some of the songs, I would be playing some, my style of writing is I play and see what comes out. I start playing either guitar or piano, and then I will start to sing. And sometimes the whole thing comes out all at once, and with no rewriting, and sometimes they're just gifts. and sometimes you work on them for years. But and so Donna sometimes would come in to sing too, and so she would add a lyric or change a lyric or whatever. But the writing was, the style was pretty much sit at the piano, at the guitar originally, and then after we did a tour with Belafonte where I were frustrated. I was frustrated with having to play the same 8 songs every night for 6 weeks, and out of frustration, I smashed a plate glass window or door with my fist, severed the flexor tendon, well, nicked the flexor tendon to my thumb enough that so on stage the following night, I hit it on the edge of my guitar and severed it finally. Poor Harry, he had to come running out on stage half dressed because the audience was gasping over the fact that there was blood pouring out of him. I didn't know it because we're singing, I'm doing it, and when I saw the sort of the looks of the folks in the front, oh shoot, this is not.
Oh.
So Harry came out, and later he introduced us as the only 2 people he knew who could kill their parents and then throw themselves to the mercy of the court for being an orphan and be set free. But so the writing was, after that, the writing was all on piano because I had 6 weeks in after reconstructive surgery, and you can play piano with one hand, but you can't play guitar with one hand. Some people seem to be able to do it nowadays, but I can't.
No, we'll talk about, because it's no secret that you were a mixed race duo. Did you either one of you experience any kind of racism at all? Yeah.
I think the background on that's because both of our families were military.
Mm-hmm.
And at least on this, fairly thick down the surface of military, the only things that really matter, seem to matter, and I say deep down on the surface, is rank or rate.
Okay.
And so we both grew up really mostly around other military kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't grow up with the kind of awareness of race or gender now, criteria that might have been more obvious had I been in other settings. I don't know. I just think so. It didn't seem a reach for me or for Donna for us to be together.
Okay.
My grandmother was from Savannah originally. I think there was some dilemma for her about her grandson being. Okay, we're on Guam at 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old. I'm on Guam. I spent 13 months in a bathing suit, and so my dad got dispatch orders to go to Korea. So he goes to Korea. We go to Pennsylvania to my grandmother's house. I'm laying in the tub upstairs, taking a bath. My grandmother walks in and shrieks. And she sees I don't have a bathing suit on now. So I'm this porcelain butt, black body. And she then proceeds to walk the neighborhood through the bathroom to prove that I'm white. 14 months, 13 months, you could get a good 10 on Guam.
Right.
And so I was just really, really, really brown.
Uh-huh.
And so for her, it was kind of that stuck in my mind later, the realization of how she overcame that to be very, very accepting of Donna and loving to Donna. we had we knew societally there was an issue, but it sort of wasn't one that we were as aware of for ourselves. I mean, I don't know from Donna's side whether she thought it was unusual, but it wasn't for me, and I didn't think it was for her. We went up to the kind of the three examples of difficulty with racism. We went up to play Berkeley Folk Festival, and we were walking in Oakland, and got sort of surrounded by about 7 or 8 wannabe Panthers. These guys who were just, they really were not. I mean, Black Panthers did an incredible benefit and social benefit to the cities that they were involved in. And these guys were just pissed. But they were walking behind us and what you do with the Devil Sister, and ushered us into an alley and let us know that if we were there in 24 hours, we would be dead. And so we spent a couple of hours walking, sort of looking over our shoulders, and just came to the realization we can't live like that. And, you know, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but we're here to do what we're here to do and be, and that's that. That was pretty much the only time from the African-American or Black side of the equation that we got that sort of racism. We played the Hungry Eye in San Francisco with Lester Scruggs and Earl Flatt. And the grandmother, I guess it's the grandmother or mother, I'm not sure who it was. She sort of said, you have permission. And Lester and Earl both said, y'all can come, meaning we could play the South. That would be all right. And they were giving us permission to do so. And I think a year later or so, we were invited to go play at the Atlanta Rock Festival. And the Atlanta Rock Festival was, you know, at the time, there's different, the audience size varies depending upon what stats you read. At the time, we were told it was 750,000. You know, there's estimates of, you know, 250,000, estimates of 500,000, who knows. But so we're flying to the South to play for the first time. I mean, although Missouri really is pretty much in the South, but Lester Maddox was buzzing the stage while we were on, and had Learjets buzz the stage while we were on stage for that event to try and prevent people from actually hearing us.
Really?
Had a wonderful sort of, we're on stage playing, and this guy comes on stage just wild-eyed and looked terrified. He said, I lost my kids. And I'm thinking, oh my God, you look out and it's just as far as you could see, there were people, right? You couldn't see the end of it. And I'm thinking, I mean, I didn't have any children at the time, but I thought, how in the world, you know, this horrifying. He said, come up to the stage and come up to the mic and make an announcement. We can find your kids, you know. And the guy steps to the stage and said, you are all my children. And we were going.
Yeah, right.
Mr. Mattis said another. I mean, it was noisy when we were trying. Yeah, wonderful.
Well, I wanted to just comment on some of my favorite tracks off of you and Donna's albums, if I could, and then get your take from your Love album. My top 2 favorites on there are Follow and I've Got a Long Way to Go.
Yeah, I
really like the guitar on that one.
Oh, thank you. Follow, such a Jerry Merrick, beautiful tune. And it's interesting because with Follow, there's a song called Four Women on the second album. That's a Nina Simone song, and we were opening for Nina at the Troubadour, and we had been playing Four Women, but now you got the writer who's on, is going to go on stage after you warm up the audience, and she, so I went to Nina and I asked, can we do the song? Would you mind if we do the song? And she said, do it, let me listen, and we'll see. And so Donna, the next set, Donna did Four Women, and Nina, with tears in her eyes, said, that is yours.
Wow, that's special. That is.
She became a good friend, and we'd stay with her when we were in New York, and she's a remarkable artist. So my point with this, Follow, we learned that song first from Richie Havens.
Okay.
And we played with Richie and asked if we could do the song, and he said, let me hear it. And he said, I won't do that while we're playing together. You guys do that. So yeah. It's interesting those two songs with with that kind of thing.
Yeah. Another track that's really nice off that album is Midnight. I really like it.
That's not a song I like.
Oh, it's not one that you like.
If every once we with all of the albums, it wasn't until, let's see, I think it's probably not until Capers and Carson, a little bit with Evolution, and a tiny bit with Special Circumstances. Mm-hmm. We were recording before we'd had the opportunity to take them on the road, mm-hmm. and learn them, work them. I mean, we wrote them, and now you got to go record them. But there's something real benefit of playing them for 10 weeks, in front of audiences, and really learning the song. I mean, it's one thing to write it; it's another thing to really know it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, with the first three albums, particularly, and especially the third one, I mean, it has some wonderful moments in it, but there are things that I wish we hadn't recorded. I just don't like the songs now. After, if I'd had them on the road, I'd learn. Oh no, I don't like that.
Well, that's quite all right. I know. I mean, most musicians are very critical of themselves as well. And it always, this song could have been better. That song, and maybe more so than the fans.
It's a funny thing, because I remember writing a song, when I was 16 or 17, writing a song and wondering how it was supposed to be sung. Mm-hmm. And at some point along the line in the discourse in my head, the realization was, what you wrote it. However you sing it, that's the way it's supposed to be done. And so that was my mantra for a while. I've subsequently learned, no, that you can learn how to sing it. It's better, because it could be better.
Well, from the All the Friendly Colors album. Now, I hope this is one that you like. Jamie. It reminds, when I heard that, it reminded me of this other song, and I kept racking my brain, like, what song is that? What song? And then you know how some things, the harder you try to think about it, the more elusive it is. Yeah. If you don't think, or sometimes like in the middle of the night, you'll wake up, that's it. But you know what song it was? Burning Bridges. It reminds me of, which song I'm talking about? Lalo Schifrin. The song, do you remember Kelly's Heroes? Do you remember the movie? With Clint Eastwood.
Oh yeah.
Okay. It's the theme song from that. Burning Bridges. Go back and listen.
When was that movie done?
That was like I want to say 70. I want to say it was early 70s or 1970, I would say.
Good, because then that makes Jamie before that.
That's right. I believe it was after you had done that. But
I think we did the first 4 albums within 3 years, I guess, 67, 70 to 70. Yeah, I don't know.
well, what about you played the nightclub circuit during '69, right?
Yeah.
Uh, any,
Also, we played, there was a wonderful circuit at the time. And I'm sorry that for the folks who are performing now, I mean, how do you learn to do it? So
Yeah.
2 folks that come to mind with that. We played with Neil Diamond for some concerts that we did. And Neil, by the way, at the time was, all of his band members were ex-addicts. And he had done a wonderful thing to get folks who are really talented. I mean, he had the sexiest female guitar player you can ever imagine with Carol Hunter, and a wonderful, wonderful bass player who later, Randy Serling, who produced some stuff for us. But Neil, he had been a staff writer, I mean, had been a writer at the Brill thing, which I can't even imagine what that would have been like, because my writing I was a staff writer at A&M Records for a little, not quite 2 years. And there was next to no cooperation with writers there, except one other story I'll come back to. But Neil had hit records before he'd ever performed.
Mm-hmm.
His first show was at the Cow Palace, San Francisco. Enormous. He said, I had no idea how to be. No idea how to be.
Yeah.
Janice Ian played as our piano player on tour for a couple of, for several gigs. She lived with us for a while in LA when she couldn't get anyone to hire her, because she said, I did not know how to be on the road. I just had to become a bitch in order to be able to cope with this. It's like the beauty of, I mean, I played in we played in clubs where the people on stage outnumbered, not for Donna and I, because it was just the 2 or the 4 of us, but we played that with Bobby Hebb. We opened for Bobby Hebb a year after Sonny. He had bought out his contract. It was supposed to be there a year earlier. He bought out his contract, and now the hoopla behind Sonny was already over. And we sat in the audience with his wife, her little puppies, and there were more of people on stage than there were in the audience.
Okay.
Now, for him, it might have been a disappointment, but if you're learning, it's great to have a small audience. Number one, because you have to actually see the person who's there, which is can be overwhelming. If there's 10,000 people there, you don't see anyone necessarily, so it's comfortable, But so getting used to being able to play 2 individuals, it's an unbelievable, powerful lesson, I think.
To make that connection.
Yeah. And for Don and I mean, for some reason, our audiences were, you could hear pins drop if there was a pin dropping. And as I think about the fact that, like, who was it? Well, I've watched a number of folks, professional singers throw up before they go on stage. I'm losing her name right now again. A wonderful, she called the audience the Assassins. And I thought, how in the world can you have that sense about where you're going to go get naked and believe that they're the assassins? And I used to, When I used to walk on stage, I'd be singing to myself a Dylan line. I've heard you say many times that you're better than no one, and no one is better than you. And if you really believe that, you know you got nothing to win or nothing to lose.
Yeah.
I'm going to go up there. The audience, my perspective was the audience wants you to be great, because if you are, it's wonderful for them.
Right.
And if I'm scared, I'm not going to be good.
Right.
And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up there and I'm going to give you everything I have. And if that's not enough, well, that's okay, because that's all I had. I'm sorry, but that's what I had. Yeah. Versus worrying about how I'm going to do that. Mm-hmm. It's so the fact that people get, and I think, by the way, you need to play a whole bunch of places to get to that level of comfort of being able to say, the best thing to do is just give them whatever you have. Right. And if that's not enough, that's all you have. So it's not your fault. Your fault.
It's not. I think a little bit of nervousness or is good. Nervous energy.
Nervousness, yeah, but it's nervous. Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's a level of excitement.
Yes, right.
I look at it's that some folks get on a roller coaster and they know it's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
I get on a roller coaster if I do, which I won't now, but I know that bolt might come off this time.
Right.
So it's the imagined outcome that is the difference between excited and terrified. Same experience, almost the same experience chemically and neurologically, but it's just what you believe the outcome is going to be.
Good analogy there. We'll talk about your appearance on the Smothers Brothers Comedy Hour.
Oh, wonderful. It was by the way, another example of some racism, if you will, because that our part of that did not air in the South.
Oh,
okay. It was replayed, I think, 2 or 3 times nationally and never aired in the South. So if we were playing the Troubadour. That's by the what Liberace was wonderful to be around and be with. Our drum, Carter Christopher Crawford Collins was our conga player who Carter had been playing with Tim Buckley.
Okay.
We shared a show with him, and he said to Timmy, "I have to go play with them." And he played with us for years. And but so Carter was he had glaucoma so bad that he couldn't see. Glass eye in one eye and glaucoma so bad in the other, you couldn't really see that well. But he was just like steel-bodied, shaved his head and then oiled it, wore these black leather overalls, and he was about the same shade as the overalls. For a lot of folks, terrifying until he smiled, and then he just lit up a room. But so Carter's played his congas, and Liberace comes up to him. I just love the way you touch those skins.
Oh my God.
This show was a treat. I think they won an Emmy for the visual photography they did with us, where they blended our faces to become one person of 2 races. This wonderful version that they did with that. We were playing the Troubadour at the same time, and filming in a studio thing also always runs crazy late. I mean, the first show we did on television was the Mike Douglas show. Got a call for 9 o'clock in the morning. And so we were warming up before the 9 o'clock, right? Starting warming up at 6 o'clock in the morning. And we didn't film until 5 in the evening.
Oh my God.
We were pretty much exhausted by then and out of voices. But they called us for 9 o'clock in the morning because we were folk singers, and you can't trust those fuckers to show up on time. So yeah, I thought that was. But so the filming is often delayed stuff. And so we're supposed to go on for I think it was probably a Saturday night show. The shows were at, I think there were 2 or 3 shows, but we were literally an hour and a half late for the first show at the Troubadour. And there was a line of folks around the block waiting for the second show. The first show had been sitting there for an hour and a half in the filled up audience. And the manager of the club, when we came, he said, thank God it was you. With any other group, they would have torn this place apart.
Really?
They just
Wow.
sat quietly waiting for us, and so we did our shows, and they were just very, very late. It was remarkable. So the Smothers Brothers was a treat to do, as was the Tonight Show and the Della Reese Show and every other. I mean, we did every TV show there was to do at the time.
Okay. Well, did you, Dickie and Tom, did you get to talk to them at all?
Some, not much. They were very socially aware, and I mean, they had chosen us to be on there because of the interracial nature of it, I think, and they were just wonderful to us, just, generous and welcoming, and
Oh, yeah.
we did the Tonight Show both with Johnny Carson and with Bill Cosby, when Bill Cosby guest hosted for it. And we also did the Westbury Music Fair with Cosby, and he never said a word to us. I mean, I thought it was weird. It's weird. In hindsight, now I'm glad he didn't.
Right. Oh, and mention, I wanted to bring up about the being on the cover of Jet magazine too.
Jet,
how were you approached for that? Were you the first Caucasian on the?
I'm the only white boy that I know of that's ever been on Sepia and Jet. I have no idea of. I mean, I don't know how they decided that or not. I don't know. I mean, we just were asked to do the interviews, and of course we said yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a feather in your cap for, I mean.
By the way, one other, you talked about the racism, and it's a very, very different version of it. I did a movie in 1971, I guess it was, called The Legend of Hillbilly John.
Right.
And one of the really, they didn't know whether they wanted an actor who they hoped could sing or a singer who they hoped could act. And it ended up coming down, I was told it came down between Arlo Guthrie and me, and they chose me for it. And one of the thoughts that Donna and I had was, well, the real advantage over the fact that Donna's pregnant, and this gives us an opportunity to take a break from being on the road. I had to write music for the show, and they were going to pay us for that, and then I was going to act in it, and they were going to pay us for that, and so Donna went with us, of course, to the filming, which was all done in the South, and one scene in the movie, towards the end of the movie, is a sort of a slave labor scene in the movie, and they hired as extras a black church to bring all these people in to be part of the scene. And so Donna was working with the kids, teaching them the song that was going to get sung. And I'm off doing what I'm doing. And I don't know whether you've seen the film or not, but there's probably, I don't know, a minute or two in total, maybe 10 minutes of the film I'm not in. So I have the title role, And it really is all about this kid, this kid, John. And so Donna's working with the kids, and they're all like between 6 and 10 a year, 10, maybe 11 or 12 at the most. But they see Donna and I interacting. And one of the little girls turned to Donna and said, "Do you know him?" And Donna was sort of startled. So, "Yeah, of course I know him. That's my husband." And they looked at me and looked back at her and looked at me and back at her. And then the kid said, "He doesn't look at all black." But there was no question in their mind, I was black. It was not conceivable in 1971 for a black child in Arkansas to believe that a white man and a black woman could be together.
Together, right. Wow.
The social indoctrination,
right,
just stunned me. And so I wrote, "No child of mine's going to plant no goddamn cotton. No child of mine's going to have to harvest up the rain. No child of mine will ever feel that pain."
Yeah.
Got a little rock to Little Rock. I went home and God went home. I got stoned and God went home.
Yeah, yes.
People, twisted children, God's almighty, bent and broken. They went to Little Rock all alone and God went home.
Yeah. Yeah. Great lyrics too. Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of those, it's interesting to me in hindsight, because my dad was a minister. So there's a whole lot of not intended, you know, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of biblical lyric in there that I didn't know I was writing biblical lyric.
Right. Well, speaking of that on the spiritual realm, from your 1970 Special Circumstances.
Yeah.
Shepherds is a great track.
Thank you. I love that track. Yes.
And the other song off of that one, I really like the guitar in Becoming. Is that a pedal steel guitar? No. Okay. Yeah, that's the. And you had some extra backing musicians too.
Had some extraordinary. Well, I mean, we had two or three of the albums were with the Wrecking Crew.
Right.
And you know, Carol Cade's the bass player for the Wrecking Crew.
Yeah.
So our bass player was late to that session, and Carol was hired to, you know, with the Wrecking Crew was all hired, but Arnie was coming to, you know, listen and learn and maybe do a little, you know, stuff later with it. And he heard Carol playing, and he left the studio just broken, saying, they should have a real bass player. Arnie had not been a real bass player. And he started to leave, and he turned her back around, and he went to Carol after the session, and he said, "You have to teach me to play bass." And he became her first student. Arnie was her first student. She started teaching folks bass after that.
Is that right?
Extraordinary.
Wow. And then my God and I also like that one as
well. Yeah, that's a good one. By the way, the voices at the end of that, and the background voices, which it's like I could stand inside that choir, you know, it's that group, and forever. I'd be satiated just to stand inside listening to. There's something about listening to those kinds of voices, you know, just melt you.
It does. It truly does. Well, why did you guys move to Polydor for the 71 album Evolution?
Yeah, well, Capitol had a question about whether or not they wanted to do it again. And you know, so I guess, you know, we just said, okay, well, thank you very much. And I had a couple of different offers, and Polydor was one. And Gary Kelgren did the producing on that. He had started the record plant in New York and in LA. And sadly, he passed away, and all of, unfortunately, I mean, he passed very early. I'm not sure it was, I'm both with he and with names.
I'm the same way.
So I mean, how or why Polydor, I don't know. Just, just really, I was willing to just go. I mean, again, we go back to our original thing was we just want to work through the summer, get a Volkswagen microbus and go.
Right.
And we got to do so much of that. I mean, we got to go, do concerts for kids in churches in Boston who were taking asylum in the churches from the draft, and then got to go to Naval Hospital and play for guys that coming back from Nam who were wounded. And we were quite anti-war, but not anti the folks who were forced to go to war.
Right.
And I'm so sorry. There's a song that I wished we had recorded, Singing in the Sewer. Baby can't get no bluer. She don't want to wonder why. I just tell her when it's time to try or if she should cry. But there's a verse in it. Honesty is treason, truth's a slave to reason. Ain't it just an awful shame? It's enough to drive you insane, enough to blow out your brains. But you don't have to hate, gal, live it like it's late, gal. You can't save the jobless poor. You can't heal the sick or sore, or all those White House wars.
Yeah. Well, it's timeless. It's timeless, lyrics like that, even today. Think about it. I think off of the Evolution album, nice arrangement that you did on the cover of He Said, She Said.
Oh, thank you. I love that. That was mine. That was not Gabrielle's. That was mine. But I mean, he's wonderful. He was magnificent.
Yeah.
And he was.
You have to really listen carefully to that one to say, this is that Beatles track,
It doesn't
because
sound like it, but
it doesn't really.
I hope that they were not offended by the fact that I twisted it so much, but I just love that version.
Yeah, I do too. I really do. It just shows you that a song can take on different life, in different arrangements. It doesn't have to be all done in one genre. That was well done on that one.
Thank you.
And then from your last album, Capers and Carson, I think my favorite track is Silver to Blue.
Oh, thank you. That's with Gabrielle. He's a part of the writing of that one.
Yeah. That's
an interesting album. I mean, he was producing three different. He was producing Donna and I, and he was doing David Clayton Thomas's first solo album. We were all recording at all rehearsing at David's house in I think it was Latigo or Horseshoe Canyon, and we all had the same band.
Mm-hmm.
And we were using, and we were singing on each other's backgrounds. And come on, what's her name? At any rate, he has her singing. Gabrielle had her singing "You Can Leave Your Hat On," and I'm listening to her do it. And when I come with the name, you'll get this one. But I'm listening to her, and I'm saying, this woman owns this song. This is like, oh yeah. And those lyrics, baby, come here, get up on that chair. A lot of people think it's about getting head, so baby, come here, you can leave your hat on. And she's singing it like she knows.
Right.
So I walked into the vocal booth after the thing because I just want to get down and kiss her feet because she's just like stunning version of this. And she has been reading the lyric sheet.
Oh, okay.
And she said, "What in the world is this about?" Yeah, just, you mentioned earlier that I'm married to Nancy.
Yeah, yeah.
Nancy was dating David Clayton Thomas at the time.
Was she?
Such
Okay.
a small world. She was my sister's best friend. I didn't know. Didn't know she was dating David.
Mhm.
So it's just a small world. I think about Nick Vinay and Kim Fowley connection. I
Mhm.
think about, then, I was good friends with John Denver, and we were managed towards the end by Jerry Weintraub, and sad to see what happened with
Yeah, yeah.
sweetheart, just this gentle, sweet guy. David Clayton Thomas plays basketball like a hockey player.
Funny. Well, yeah. Talk about how that you and Nancy met and
She's
uh,
my sister's best friend.
okay.
And I met her when, 1970, I guess. It must have been earlier than that. No, because it was at Nash Street. So it had to be 68, I think, or so. And there was an obvious connection between the two of us, and we were both connected somewhere else, and both made a sort of a conscientious effort to make sure we were not alone together.
Right.
And then I was going through a divorce, and my sister said, this is like now it's, let's see, 28 years later, my sister said to her, yeah, how about just going out with him or something? He's lonely, he's depressed, and maybe you could cheer him up some. And she said, yeah, I think it's too dangerous. Ruth told me that, and I said, oh, I like that a lot. That's good.
You're dangerous.
Yeah, we had actually spent. I had written a musical about 30 years ago or so. Never got produced, but I've written a musical, and she was an actress, and she was the creative director of the Alliance Theater in Burbank, from which all kinds of actors that we've seen on the screen come, and so I thought she would be a good resource to kind of give me some feedback on the play, on the musical. And so we had about a 3.5-hour session of sitting in my garage with the piano and the computer and going through the script of it, which was very uncomfortable.
Was it?
But I was appreciative of her feedback, but it was still just sort of like,
Well, what movies or shows was she in? You might plug for viewers out there that.
The thing that she continues, well, she gets residuals from a lot of different things, but the Pretty Woman,
Okay.
and I don't have that off the top of my head stuff, but she's like 40 or 50 films and a bunch of TV stuff. But we keep seeing her every other day on Pretty Woman, because it's almost like Jack Tempchin was a good friend, and we were the first people to record any of Jack's things. I met with Jack a couple of months ago, and he had just been indoctrinated in the Songwriters Hall of Fame.
Okay.
He said he was thanking me because he said the fact that you guys recorded me that early had me convinced that maybe I could do that.
Right.
But somewhere, every 30 seconds, somewhere on the planet, Peaceful Easy Feeling is played.
Yeah.
I'm sorry he didn't give us that song instead, but Strawberry Malt, and what could I say?
That's a great song now.
Yeah, I love that song. Again, I like his right. It's he and I are both, because we both still write. I'm working on stuff again. I haven't stopped. But I think about for Jack, he said, I will go put things on YouTube. If 100 people listen to it, it's a huge win.
Mhm. Mhm.
My God, this is a guy who's written such magnificent things, and he's written things that are playing everywhere. And that's all that you get, and I have things on YouTube that I put up there that are as good as anything I think I've ever written, musically and some lyrically. I just finished an anti-war thing, the last thing that I put on YouTube, which is about the Ukraine. It was like up in the streets of Lebanon, the war there's still going on. There are hearts too hardened for crying. And the lyric is beautiful, I think. And I love the melody of it. And, it's got 300 people have seen it. It's like, well, it's a different world for writers now.
Yes, it truly is.
Yeah. And for some, it's magnificent that they have that kind of, the kind of access that's available. YouTube is amazing from that perspective. And unfortunately, I'm in a position where I don't need to make any money off doing it.
Right.
But the writers just would really like to know someone heard it.
Right. I think making any kind of connection with an audience is worthwhile. Yeah, I agree with that. Well, you, how did you both? I guess for some time you had an interest in therapy, psychotherapy. You both got degrees.
My dad was a Navy chaplain, and then became. He met Eric Byrne, the guy who was father of transactional analysis, when he was in Monterey, and he became one of Eric's 12 disciples for the ITA, the International Transactional Analysis Association founding members. And Eric used to bring his groups to hear Donna and I in San Francisco, saying, I want you to all see what intimacy actually is, which was fun to see, because he had a pretty high scale for what he felt was the benefits of intimacy. But so he became a psychologist, and so it was sort of a natural. After music, I sort of wondered, well, when we retired from the music industry, I wasn't quite sure why I was still alive.
Oh, okay.
Because I had done everything I ever dreamed of doing. I'm sure I wanted to hit records, but I never really dreamed about it. And we came to that story was an interesting one. When we went on the road after the movie with a child, an infant, and we were making between 35 and $5,000 a week, which in 1967 seems like a ton of money. But you pay 20% to the manager and 15% to the agent for a less than week-long thing, and 5% to the business manager. And then you pay the room and board and transportation for your band. And so we played, I remember University of Massachusetts Amherst paid us $3,500 for 30 minutes, cost us $50 a piece.
Oh God.
And so after going on the road, we said, we need to be making $10,000 a week, between $7,500 and $10,000 a week, to be able to hire someone to come with us to be able to make it viable and doable. And the only way to do that is to have a hit single. Yeah. And so we went back into the studio with the intent to we need to find something that's top 40. and we did a song called Guava Jelly
Okay, right.
prior to the big, reggae thing. And I think I love the song. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful song. I mean, it's a fun song too. And so this was going to be it. Let's find out if we can make a hit record. And this is the one. And so we went to the studio, cut the song. It was released, and it was released simultaneous to a record pressing plant strike.
Mm.
The record was sent out to the radio stations, became the #1 phone request record in the nation. Mm-hmm. There were no records available to be bought.
Oh man.
Well, no, I don't shake my head with it at all, because life would have been different.
Yeah.
And at the time, I thought it was kind of too bad. I have another story like that, but it was sort of like, okay. And so we decided we'll pack it in, and we went back to school, back to to postgraduate school for both psychology, because Donna was going to go to San Francisco State. Instead, we went to the United States International University here in San Diego. And that was the beginning of it. And about a year after the first year, I started feeling like I'm not really done with music. Mm-hmm. And so I was writing, and I ended up with a record, songwriting. I got signed to A&M Records as a staff writer. Yeah. And Don and I had separated, and but I really, that period after, it's sort of like I really have done everything I dreamed about doing. And
did you ever meet Herb Albert?
No, did not meet her, but I remember the thing that I thought was so remarkable. Do you know the Fantasy Records? I'm sure you have Fantasy Records in your.
Yes.
They're clear red.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And Cal Jader, I had remember Cal Jader doing stuff, and I loved his stuff, and I loved his playing. His brother, Curry Jader, was the guy who brought me into Alma Irving. And it was sort of remarkable to think I'm a songwriter and they're going to pay me just. I get to the office and I get to go in, and so I about a year into my work with them, they said, we're going to send you to Nashville to write down there with some guys down in Nashville. And I made the comment that the songwriters was not quite like the real billing that I've heard about. But so I go to Nashville to write, and had a great time, some good writers down there, and that was fun. And I spent, I think, 2 weeks down there, and I came back and I went into my office, and I had the strangest feeling like, ooh, and I had thumbtacked or stick pinned to the wall everything that I'd written for them while I was there. And there were, I don't know, 100 or so songs or so up on the wall. And I, for some reason was taking them all down, put them in my briefcase. And I walked up to the front desk, and I just got at the strangest. I feel like I walked into a box canyon with 100 rifles trained on me. The woman who's sitting at the desk, always gorgeous at the desk at A&M. She sort of stammered, said, I think Joel would like to see you. And I said, oh, yeah, okay. Joel Sill, who was the VP of Alma Irving at the time. And so I go in, and he said, I just want you to know, while you were down in Nashville, I went to the Bahamas with Carol. That's the woman that I was living with. Yeah. And okay, so you sent me to the Bahamas so you could take the woman I'm living with to
right.
And he said, I hope this is not going to affect our professional relationship. And I got in my car and I drove around the freeways of LA screaming for about an hour.
I would have too.
And I went back and I wrote You smile at me and you say that you're fine, but you're into love like a late night crime. It's been first degree and I don't believe that it's love. You holler help and I rush come see. Next thing I know, you're killing me. I'm a casualty of your infancy, but not of love. I should have known who you were on your own. You'd broken each word, heart of stone. I should never have turned. Hell, will I ever learn? This ain't no mystery. It's just first degree. It's not love. Wrote that. And well, I heard you say you finally found a way. It's a little day to day. You've learned to live with a lover who'd leave your body aching. You just close your eyes, you practice lies, you give a little heave, you fake a little sigh, you tell yourself your heart's not really breaking. Hell, I think it's working from the waist down, honey. I'm just convinced that it's sane. And I don't see how you could sound so funny falling from our name. I gave the songs and one other one, but I gave the songs and he said, we think your personal life is affecting your writing.
It sounds like it.
I said, I thought that's why you hired me.
Right, right.
So I walked after that. And that's really sort of when I was wondering what in the world do I do? Because I'd done everything I ever really wanted to do. And it was a couple of interesting sort of period of time of just sort of, And then I said, I guess it's time for new dreams.
Yeah, yeah.
Went back and finished my degrees in psychology and got my licenses. And for Nance, she had been in Scientology for years, and Scientology and psychotherapy one doesn't recognize the other. One recognizes the other. But and she had been exposed when my dad had an institute in La Jolla, and so she had been exposed to Carl Rogers and Fritz Perls and pretty much everything, in the world of 80s psychology, she got exposed to through my sister, and so it became really important, and also she was aboard a TWA flight that was from New York to Paris to Rome to Athens. And in Paris, a woman gets on the plane, and in Rome, she makes a fuss on the tarmac and gets off the plane and leaves a bomb under her seat. Set to go off at 30,000 feet, goes off at 10,000 feet, blows a hole in the plane, 6 people. And it was in retaliation it's the first of those sorts of events. And so she had some PTSD stuff associated with that. And that really was also influential in her decision to, go into psychotherapy and both for herself and then for others who, experience things like that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know how I would ever want to fly again after.
She will. And I imagine I wouldn't, but her orientation as well, it's the worst has already happened,
Well, that's true. That's true. Do you remember?
Somehow the plane went from 10,000 feet to 4,000 feet like a rock falling. And somehow the pilot was able to get it under control and get it back down on the ground. If it had gone off at the 30,000 feet it was supposed to, everyone would have been killed on the plane.
Oh, yeah.
It wasn't pressurized enough to blow everything up.
Yeah. That kind of reminds me of that attitude, outlook of, remember The World According to Garp? You saw that movie, right?
Yeah.
Okay, where they go to look for houses and they see the one that's destroyed. I don't know, was it just a storm? Not a tornado, I don't know, but it just
Storm, I think, yeah.
Yeah, storm, and he said, that's the one I want right there. And they're like, why? Like, well, because the worst has already happened. It can't happen again. No, that's the one I want. Yeah, that kind of,
That's a good mentality. Yeah, it's like a freeing mentality.
Right.
I know more about it.
Right. Well, talk a little bit about the geese and me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nance was listening to some of my writing, and she said, "You have all these songs; they're just magnificent. let's do a thing about you and Donna and do a musical about that. And I said, well, I don't know that anybody'd be interested in that at this point. It's been a long time later. And those are all old stuff. Let's do some new stuff instead. I'll write new stuff. And so I sat down, and it had been a couple of, I don't know how long it had been since I'd been writing, but I sat down to try and write, and I couldn't sing. I literally had no breath control. I couldn't maintain any notes. My range was all screwed up, and I thought, what? That's weird. I just never had. Maybe it's a muscle. I haven't been using it enough. I just need to work the muscle, and it'll be back. And I tried that, and that didn't do anything. And I said, oh, that's weird. And I've never had vocal lessons. Maybe if I try some vocal lessons, maybe they can do something with that. Mm-hmm. And so I went to someone and took a couple of lessons, but that didn't do anything. And Nance said, I think you should go just have a doc look down your throat and see what's going on. And I said, no, it can't be. He said, well, no, how about doing that anyway for me? And I said, okay. And so I made an appointment, and the doc, stuck his scope in there, and he said, well, I understand why you can't sing. I'm surprised you can speak. You've got a growth on one of your vocal cords about the size of a large cashew. And when the vocal cords try to come together to produce a note, it gets in the way, and it needs to come off now, because we don't know if it's cancerous or not. And so they went inside, did the operation. He said, benign, great, silence for a month. And some of my friends appreciated that, I think. And after a month, I could sing. And I thought, my God, I'm 70. I was probably just under 70, maybe, or 70 at the time, maybe a little, maybe 68, 69. And I thought, no, what we need for me, the theme of whatever it is that we do is we're not done. And so it really was about, then I went to a seminar at UCSD, the Center for Healthy Aging, and saw these statistics that were sort of remarkable. The first time they'd done a longitudinal study on the self-reported quality of life. And they had 17-year-olds and 90-year-olds, and about a 6 or 7 year, 10-year rather, long study, longitudinal study on it. And that, of course, before this study, every time there's any study on aging, they'd ask questions like, well, have you any diminishment of your hearing? How about any diminishment of vision, of anything, like that? And I think your hearing peaks at age 12, your vision peaks somewhere around age 10. And literally, it's downhill from there. And so, yes, there's going to be diminishment of those, but they'd never asked the question of the self-reported quality of life. And the outcome was at 17, through the roof, the world's my oyster, everything's great. And it goes downhill from there to somewhere around the age of about 52, which was the average mean low. And from 72, it goes back up. And at 70, it's the same as it was at 17. And it goes up from there. And yes, there's aspects of life that are, problematic or difficult, but the quality of one's experience of it is different. And so that you're happier, and there's no, so it was a remarkable study, kind of learning. And I had gone from a therapist to a consultant, a business consultant for years with a firm called Spencer Shank and Associates, which is sort of a boutique firm in LA. And WellPoint, which was Blue Cross Blue Shield of California at the time, WellPoint, they became WellPoint. They were bankrupt at the time when we were asked to come help them. And I found a notice somewhere within I'm pretty sure it was WellPoint, that listed the internal an acronym for the activities of daily living. So, I mean, you need to be able to dress yourself, to bathe yourself, to feed yourself. Those are the activities of daily living. But they had this moniker for it that was dressing, eating, ambulating, toileting, hygiene, DEATH.
Yeah.
And so, of course, that had to be part of, part of the song that, you're going to do when you can't no more walk, wake, or wipe by yourself for sure. Hang by a thread or get your butt on through that door and get it out walking. Yes. So the show was about aging and about a group of people who are living in a place and dealing with the things that they're dealing with. And homelessness was the number one fear of women over the age of 50, no matter their economic status. So we had to, we had a wonderful song, Rag Lady, that I think was just a remarkable piece of work, and wonderful singers for it. And got old folks that can't do much of nothing, old folks that can't walk or crawl, old folks that get all bent over. They ain't good for much of nothing at all. But you're going to get to be one. It's time, and you're going to end up useless, just like you think I am. Young folks, you get bathed in beauty. Young folks, you got the world to see. You're washed in wonder and free to wander. Well, we remember how it used to be.
Yeah, I have a 16-year-old, and there's so many times that I think I wish I could tell him the lessons, that I know that would help him get through life and make it not so painful for him. But you can't do that. They've got to go through it themselves, and
Hopefully.
yeah, and just like my dad couldn't do it for me, and
but what you get, I just encourage you to just, enjoy him and love him, and
we do.
And I lost a son when he was 20, and it's not the way the world's supposed to be, and just love them. Yeah.
Love them while they're here. You're right. We'll talk about little about you writing the music for the Smartleys. How were you approached for?
I don't know how they. We had a PR woman that we hired to help with the Geese and me. And I think she was working with the Smartleys, and she recommended me for that. I know we almost didn't work with her. She's wonderful. Susan Faris was the woman. She was wonderful for us with the PR thing. But I figured you couldn't have a play about aging without mentioning sex in the thing. And I thought about we have one verse in one song. One verse was, so you wake up with a woody, it's just because you got to pee. Yeah, you might like to make that whoopee, but the geese won't let you be. No. So that was one version of it. But then I thought there has to be a real, song about a man's version of sex in their 70s, so I did it, and I thought it was completely an homage to that which fed us. So melons, muffins, sweaters, stuffings, bullets, boobies, sack cuties, dumplings, mangoes, boulders, buttons. We just want to love them. Titty bumps, bumps on that top or bottom. We don't care where they sit. We're just glad you got them. Miracle of life, true, you fed us. Now we lust for you. It's nature. I'm sorry, man, but we love to hold them in our hands. Honey, If you think they're small or somehow not perfection, most of us would sell our souls just to give them our affection. And we liked it so much better when none of us wore clothes because we could see them every day. Those and those and those titty bumps, lovely lumps, those milkshakes, pillows, feeders, those titty bumps, sweet, sweet lumps, those jugs and tata teasers. Why do we love them? Why do we care? Why would we spend our cash just to sit and stare? It's in our genes. It's in our slacks. It's hardwired in our cells. It's nature's way to raise that flag and ring that luscious ding dong, ding, ding dong. If I don't get them, then something's wrong. Ding dong, ding, ding dong. If I don't get them, then something's wrong. Titty bumps, this my last conclusion. Red or yellow, black, brown or white, we're gonna love those sweet protrusions. But if you think that all got lost because you got no bump, just turn around and we'll be sold staring at that rump. So she objected to titty. She said she wouldn't work on a show that said, so lady bumps, and I'm disappointed to this day. But then, because then the female members of the cast said, well, where's our song?
Yeah, they need their song. That's right.
So I wrote this song. I got a sailor in me tonight. It's gonna rip loose the moorings. Just a sailor in me tonight. I don't give a damn for the storm warnings. Ooh, I'm gonna get drunk and dirty. And some folks might not think that it's too pretty, but I'm gonna sing it long as I got the life. I got a sailor in me tonight. There's too many nights we left each other wanting, too many times we never really tried, and too many hopes that never had their moment while we were laying side by side. I was dreaming, I was thinking that I'd wake up. I was praying that I'd wake up, just hoping that I'd wake up. But I got a sailor in me tonight. It's gonna rip loose these moorings. Yeah.
Rip those moorings, yeah. Well, see, you have a great memory for lyrics, for sure.
I had a weird aspect of my brain.
Yeah, it's how it's hardwired. It's hardwired that way. Well, mention your most recent foray into acting, the Lucifer. Yeah, talk about that.
Susie and Don are old friends. Susie is, wonderful actress and producer and writer, and Don is an engineer, and they've done kind of wonderful things over the years, and they were doing this project, and they asked Nancy and I to be voices in it, and we said, of course. And it's wild. It's I mean. It's I was a boogeyman. I got to be a boogeyman, so, and it's a fun raucous, I don't know how many episodes there are. I died off early, so but it's a fun show.
What platform can you watch that on?
I don't know. I will send you a link thing for it. I'm not sure. Okay. Again, that's one of those technology issues that
Right. All right. Well, winding down here a little bit, I think we've covered a lot of ground. I did want to ask you this, and I know you've probably been asked this 100 times or more. I gotta throw this joke out there, but did you ever have any thoughts of performing with George Benson? Right.
Michael Hedges has that too. Yeah.
They still make the Benson and Hedges cigarettes. I looked that up too.
No, I don't think his music is extraordinary too. But
yeah, you were at the same type of.
How did you come to know Hedge and Donna?
I like to dig deeper than a lot of people, I guess, in my music. Well, I mean, you can see around me that I like to find some of those undiscovered what I call gems, and never been one for the top 40, the commercial stuff. I've always liked to, like I said, discover some of the hidden talent that's been out there, for years and years. There's a good website, Rate Your Music,
Mm-hmm.
and RYM, and that's where I discovered a lot of stuff. You can key in a certain genre. Like I've always liked folk, folk rock, soft folk, pop folk. So you key that in, and it'll have these people that are rate their albums and artists, and some of them get the higher ratings. I'll look into them, and just research it, and that's how I find a lot of these bands. And another way is just through various artist compilations. Well, that one I showed you, the Kim Fowley,
Oh,
that kind of thing. Yeah, and just like to find out about new artists. Well, new to me,
yeah.
and so that's probably how I ran across you guys.
Well,
Uh, yeah. So
I'm looking at your collection back there.
right.
They should let you loose inside of Alma Irving's attic.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I went up there and just pulled things to listen to, a couple of times,
Yeah.
and there are, I mean, amazing is a kind of inadequate word, I think, for unbelievably talented, wonderful things
Yeah. Yeah.
that no one else is ever going to hear.
Right. And I found out a long time ago, if you just go per the industry, again, what sells and what's popular, you're going to miss out on so much, so much good quality material out there. And I remember,
Some of it, the artists
yeah,
are
go ahead.
themselves. They're making it impossible. There's a writer named Mindy Sterling
Mhm.
who is, she's as good as anybody out there. I mean, she's as good as Carole King, as good, she's written some of the most beautiful things.
Mhm.
But she was impossible to work with
Okay.
because she's very, very just, certain about what it's supposed to be.
Uh,
And
uh-huh.
people didn't have the patience to work with some of it. And I listen to her stuff and I just think, oh my God, it's just so good.
Yeah.
I'll send you a couple of her things.
Yeah, do. I'm always open to yeah, discovering and hearing and listening to other. And you mentioned when we first got in contact with each other about how 50 years later you just can't believe, that people are interested.
Um,
Yeah.
well, I told you there. I mean, there's the film is being re-released, the
Mhm.
Legend of Hillbilly John, and now it's under a different. I think it's under a different title, and and there've been interviews with people writing other books and stuff like that about. I mean,
Yeah.
it's bizarre to me because
And the interviews, but the internet, I mean, it's a double-edged sword. It really is. I mean, there's a good and the bad side of technology, but the good side has been that just resurgence in interest in music like this, from the 60s and 70s, and especially. And that's the era that I really focus a lot on. And there were so many that flew under the radar, and that people are rediscovering, these days.
yeah,
I say quality music, good music is going to travel, and it's going to last, and people are going to find out about it, and they'll appreciate it. And that's like you and Donna. I mean, it's great music. It's what it is. And so people today, younger people, they have an ear for it, you know. And I'm sure your older fans have, that are still with us, that, still listening. So,
Most of it, there's many of them were much younger than we were, so they're still around. I thought 2 nights ago, I think it was on KPBS, I watched a wonderful tribute to Joni Mitchell.
mhm.
And Joni came to our dressing room the first day she was in LA.
Is that right?
And she sat down, and Doug Kershaw, Joni, Tim Buckley, Donna and I, and one other guy, and she sat and played stuff. And we didn't want to go on stage because we just wanted to sit and listen. You could tell extraordinary.
Uh-huh.
And I only had that experience one other time when we were headlining the Troubadour, and they asked us to have a guest set for a kid who had an album coming out, and he played a couple of songs, and I asked him after, I said, we would love to do that song. And he said, I would just love to hear you guys do it, but my album's coming out in 3 months, and I can't have it out, it has to come out by myself. And just yesterday morning, they let me know you were gone.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
I only heard, there was only 2 songs that I wanted to do that we couldn't get, and that was one of them. And another one that was offered to us is Where's the Playground, Susie? And I said, no, Glenn did a good job with it. So
yeah. Well, I know it's I mean, so much of the music, and this, is timing. Timing is so important. And you guys were very fortunate that you were at the Troubadour that time, and Doug Weston, and also Nick, and just the stars kind of aligned for you. Yeah.
It's it's, as I said, I mean, it's all I ever wanted to do.
Right.
I mean, as a 5-year-old, that's what, and later, I mean, I watched the radio and my sister and her friends dancing, and they were gathered together, and the reason they were together was music.
Yeah.
That just confirmed it. So, okay.
Yeah.
And I just, and then, get to be about 13, 14, and you say, oh, and there's money and women. And then you wake up one day and you're singing a song, and it comes out your pores.
Yeah.
You realize, oh my God, I wanted this for all the wrong reasons.
Right. Well, that's part of maturing too. Yeah. Yeah.
Music to me it's been so much just what life is.
Yeah.
But I just say that's, it makes breathing in and out easier, and that's pretty important for life. So,
isn't it? And it's once you know that and it's in you, you have to express it. You can't suppress it. You have to express it. So,
amen.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah, I'm kind of pooped out too.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah. Well, for sure. And I thank you, and thank you for sharing so much. And some of those anecdotes too. That's what makes it unique and special. So we will stay in touch, and we do appreciate it. I appreciate it, and I know others will too once they watch it.
Oh, thank you.
So, yeah, I appreciate it, Hedges. And we will. I'll let you know as soon as this is ready live, and again, you can post it to your social media and let everybody know.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll send you Mindy stuff.
Yes, please do. Please do.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.